Hello, everyone, and welcome to the premiere of what I hope to be a series where I get to share my newfound love of all things drone related with the rest of the world. For our first video today that we're putting out, I thought it would only be appropriate to do a small review as a beginner pilot myself and share my thoughts on the Tinyhawk Lite model. This might help anybody out who is trying to get into the hobby but not quite know where to start. So if you find this review helpful or enjoyable at the very least, please consider subscribing and sticking around. I would love to be putting out a bit more content for everybody and growing a bit of a community where everyone can get together, talk about drones, share some advice and some stories. I think that would be great. So, thank you for listening and let's get into it. If you find yourself wanting to try out flying drones or being a drone pilot, there are two primary styles of drone that you might consider purchasing. First is the camera or photography-oriented drone, which are generally much easier to control. They've got a much easier control scheme and obviously are mainly for recordings and taking pictures. And the second is what is known as an FPV drone, which is more of the sports car, if you will, of the drone world. And today we're looking at the Tinyhawk Lite, which is an FPV drone. But before we get any further into that, if you are brand new to looking into the world of drone flying, you need to know if the hobby is for you before you go and drop $400 on a drone and a controller, right? So before you even think about purchasing a drone, the first thing that you want to do is pick up a simulator on your PC, or you can get them on your phone too, but I personally use the Uncrashed drone simulator on Steam. You can pick that up for, I think it was $20 Australian, so what that'd be roughly 15 USD. And if you've got an Xbox controller or a Steam Deck controller, you can use that and plug that in. If not, it is preferable to buy a cheap drone remote to really practice with, as that's obviously, the most accurate thing because it is what controls the drones in real life. So if you can get used to using the drone remote in the simulator straight away, it will just make things much easier when you go to do it in real life. So as I said, I use the Uncrashed simulator, which I will show you on the screen now. I have roughly 34 hours of gameplay as of making this video, and 2 hours, I would estimate, of flight time in real life with the drone itself. And from that, I can compare. I think that the simulator, it does do a really good job of capturing how an FPV drone will feel. Once you decided to pursue the hobby a bit further after you've played around with the simulator a little bit, if you decide to go with the Tinyhawk model in particular, these are the settings that I've found emulate the Tinyhawk as close as I can get in-game to real life. Now, if you've decided to keep going with the hobby, we get into the real fun stuff. I'm going to show you what comes in the Tinyhawk Lite pack up next. This is what you can expect to find in the box once you have your Tinyhawk Lite at home. First, you have the drone, which is no bigger than the palm of your hand, really, quite small. It's what is known as a tiny whoop drone. So that's the tiny little itty bitty ones rather than the big expensive FPV drones. It is quite malleable plastic on the outside, so that means that you can hit things with a decent amount of speed, and the drone, it should have quite good stability. You can't really see it, but I've already given this one a bit of a flogging. I've crashed it around outside. You can see the green from where I've chopped up a bit of the grass, and it is still flying perfectly. After a couple hours flight time learning and crashing constantly, it still works perfectly fine. The other things that you get in the box included are a couple of little spare adapters and some spare screws and propellers. Hard to see there. You get a couple of charging cables to charge the remote control itself and the single battery that you get. Now, you get one battery in the kit, and it has roughly 7 to 8 minutes flight time, depending on the wind and how often you're just flooring it. It lasts for about 7 to 8 minutes, and you can charge up to 6 batteries on this USB stick, but it does only come with one. So if you do want more, you will have to purchase more from the Emax website. And then aside from the drone and the remote control itself, to get the most value out of what you would consider an FPV drone, you have the first-person vision goggles. So these are quite cheap, and that is because they have an analog video system. So it's not digital, and there is no SD card slot in this housing. So with the set that you get, you cannot record anything that you see with the drone, unfortunately. As you'll see later, I have recorded some of the flight with my DJI Mini 3. That's how I got a bit of the footage that you'll see a little bit later. 2 antennas that you'll need to screw in to receive the video properly from the drone. It is adjustable. You will have to pull this out. It feels very claustrophobic if you push this all the way in. Let's see, we'll turn it on so we can just see that little bit of analog Emax logo in there. And when you turn it on, it's very hard to see here, but that's just all static. So when you do put the headset on and you go to use it, it will have the old lines to it, like, you know, the VHS tapes used to. So that is completely normal. That is functioning how it should. This also pops off here. So if you do feel too claustrophobic using the goggles, you can just use the adapter that comes with the set, and you can put stand this little viewing platform on the top of the remote, and you can fly the drone that way. But personally, I think it is much more fun to fly it through the goggles. For my honest thoughts on this neat little drone, this being my first real experience with an FPV drone as well, I could honestly, hands down, not be happier with how it feels as a complete beginner. I feel it's probably the best drone that you could pick up to learn with for 2 main reasons. One is that, and this sounds a little bit contradictory, but it's quite lacking in thrust. So what that means is if you go into a bit of a nosedive, or you try to do a little bit of a flip and you completely drop the throttle, unless you are really high up, you will not really recover in time. And I'll try to put up a little clip of that now that I've recorded in the background. And I think this is good for a complete beginner, because if you can really get a hang of that throttle, like really get a hang of it while it's underpowered, you will have absolutely no problem with a higher powered, more responsive drone later in the future. The second reason is if you look on the controller that you get with this particular drone kit, there's a switch, and that you can switch it from beginner mode, intermediate mode, and expert mode. For the first 2, beginner and intermediate, the drone has the ability to self-level or self-stabilize, meaning if you take your hand off the roll or your stick, you won't have to worry about it crashing, so long as you're still giving it a little bit of throttle. If you leave it on its side, on a tilt, it will self-level to be completely stable. This is more akin to the photography drones, much simpler to use and stress-free, I suppose. You don't have to constantly be thinking about where the drone is, how it's orientated, and where it's going to go if you do have to take your hands off the controller for a second. In the third mode, expert mode, it gives you full control of the drone. So that is, in my opinion, much more fun, because that lets you start to do tricks. You can get really creative with how you fly around things, carry your momentum around corners, and keep the speed up. It's just a lot more fun overall, and once you get the hang of the controls, you'll never go back to intermediate or beginner mode. Once you do have a hang of the controls, this thing is an absolute blast to use in the yard or even inside. It's sturdy enough that you won't have to worry about breaking it unless you are being excessively rough with it. The frame is quite malleable and all of the components are quite well hidden, so you won't really have to worry about any damage as far as the electronics goes, because it's quite light. If you crash, it's not going to have a lot of force behind it, so it should be quite safe, again, unless you're just absolutely hammering it into like a brick wall or something. Becomes even more fun once you start to get a bit more creative with your surroundings. So in my backyard, you can see I've set up just a small obstacle course of 3 or 4 hula hoops, and you just make a small racetrack out of them. We've got a couple of garden beds. You can fly in between the tree branches, in around the bushes. Really, imagination is what makes FPV piloting so fun. You can just fly it anywhere, try to make a track anywhere. And look, even flying it inside, with where I live, it is quite small, and we've got 2 cats that would destroy the drone, I think, if they got a hold of it, so outside it is for me, but it is ideal inside as well. Cannot go wrong. And probably less things to break it on inside as well, less height you have to worry about falling from, and potentially softer falls if you've got vinyl or something. But out in the yard is where I mostly fly it around, and I don't think you can go wrong with it. Hey, it is a perfect backyard basher to kickstart your love for drones, just as it has for me. This is all I have for now. It'd be awesome if you'd consider subscribing so we can create a community of drone enthusiasts so we can learn off each other, share some advice, some stories, and some cool photos and photography, show each other some new tricks. Thank you for watching, that is all, and I will see you in the next video.